The knock in the storm, the night was darker than usual. Thick clouds covered the sky, hiding the moon and stars. The wind howled through the empty street, carrying with it a bite of winter that cut deep into the bones. Snow fell without mercy, covering every roof, every road, every forgotten corner. In the middle of this storm, a small wooden cabin stood quietly at the edge of town. Its single light glowed like a faint beacon in the endless night. Inside the cabin, a man named Daniel sat near the fireplace. He was in his 30s, an ordinary human who lived alone. Life had not been easy for him, but he had grown used to the silence. The fire cracked, and the warmth kept him safe from the storm outside. Daniel thought the night would pass like any other, quiet, lonely, uneventful. Then it happened. Knock, knock. The sound startled him. At first he thought the storm had played a trick on his ears. But then it came again, louder this time, urgent, desperate. Knock, knock, knock. Daniel stood up slowly, his heart beating faster. Who could be outside in such terrible weather? Visitors never came at night, and in a storm like this it was almost unthinkable. He walked to the door, his steps heavy, his mind full of questions. Carefully he pulled the wooden latch and opened the door just enough to look outside. What he saw left him frozen in place. A girl stood there, her small body shaking violently from the cold. Her skin was pale blue, almost glowing under the weak porch light. Her eyes were large, silver, and full of fear. She was not human. Her hair clung to her wet face, and her clothes were torn, hardly enough to fight the freezing wind. Snowflakes stuck to her thin shoulders as she trembled, clutching herself for warmth. Daniel's first thought was simple disbelief. An alien right here on his doorstep. Please, she whispered, her voice so faint he could barely hear it over the storm. I need help. For a moment, Daniel didn't move. He had heard stories of aliens, some peaceful, some dangerous. Many humans didn't trust them. Many aliens didn't trust humans either. But this girl, she looked helpless on the edge of collapse. He opened the door wider and the icy wind rushed in. Come inside, he said quickly, pulling her in before the storm could swallow her whole. She stumbled as she entered, nearly falling, but Daniel caught her arm. Her skin was ice cold. He guided her toward the fire and helped her sit down on the rug. She curled up close to the warmth, her arms wrapped tightly around her knees, shivering uncontrollably. Daniel fetched a blanket and wrapped it around her. You'll freeze to death out there, he said, his voice firm but gentle. Stay by the fire. The girl looked at him with wide, cautious eyes. She said nothing for a while, only breathing heavily, trying to recover from the storm. Her lips were purple and her hands shook as she held the blanket closer. What's your name? Daniel asked, trying to break the silence. She hesitated, as if even a simple answer carried danger. Finally she spoke. Lyra. Her voice cracked, but the single word was clear. Daniel nodded. All right, Lyra, you're safe here. Safe. The word seemed strange in the cabin, as though safety was something fragile that could vanish any second. He stood and went to the small kitchen, preparing a cup of hot tea. The steam rose gently as he brought it to her. Lyra accepted it with trembling hands, sipping slowly. Each sip seemed to bring a little color back to her face. For a while, neither of them spoke. The storm outside roared, but inside the cabin, only the sound of fire and shallow breathing filled the air. Daniel studied her from a distance. She looked young, maybe late teens or early 20s in human years. But it wasn't just her alien appearance that made her unusual. There was something in her eyes, something broken, something hunted. He wanted to ask her what she was doing out there, why she was alone, why she had come to his door. But before he could speak, she whispered again, They'll find me. Her voice was full of fear. Please don't let them find me. Daniel frowned. Who's looking for you? But Lyra only shook her head, curling tighter into the blanket, her silver eyes shimmering with tears. Daniel felt a chill, one that had nothing to do with the storm. Whoever they were, they had driven this girl into the freezing night, desperate enough to knock on a stranger's door. The fire flickered, shadows dancing on the walls. Daniel stood by the window, pulling the curtain aside to look outside. Snow covered everything. The storm hid the world in white silence. But in the distance, just beyond the trees, he thought he saw a light. It was faint, but it moved, not the storm. Not the wind. Someone or something was out there. Daniel's heart tightened. He turned back to the girl. She was staring into the fire, whispering words in a language he didn't understand. The storm had brought her to his door, but the real danger might be right behind her, and now, whether he wanted it or not, Daniel was part of it. Shelter of strangers, the storm outside grew even stronger. The wind rattled the windows of the small cabin, and the snow piled higher against the door. Daniel placed another log into the fireplace, making sure the flame stayed bright. The heat was the only thing keeping the room alive. Lyra sat near the fire, wrapped in the blanket, her body still trembling. Steam rose from the cup of tea in her hands. She sipped slowly, her silver eyes watching the fire as if she was afraid it might disappear. Daniel pulled up a chair, sitting across from her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. He studied her carefully. Her skin had strange, faint patterns that glowed softly under the light, almost like lines of silver running across her arms. Her hair, damp from the snow, shimmered faintly in shades of blue. She was unlike any alien he had ever heard about. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. "You're safe here, at least for tonight." Her head turned quickly, eyes sharp with suspicion. "No one is safe, not me." "Not you," Daniel frowned. "Who's after you?" Lyra lowered her gaze, clutching the blanket tighter. "Hunters," she whispered. "They don't stop. They don't forgive. If they see me alive, they'll kill anyone near me." Her words sent a chill through Daniel. He leaned back, trying to stay calm. "Why would they want you dead?" Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. Instead, she shook her head and pressed the cup closer to her chest, as if hiding behind its warmth. Daniel sighed. He could see the fear in her eyes, but also exhaustion. She was not lying. Every movement, every glance told him she had been running for a long time. He stood and went to the small kitchen again, opening a cabinet. Inside, he found some bread and a jar of honey. Carrying the food to the table, he placed it in front of her. "Eat something. You'll need your strength." Lyra hesitated, her silver eyes flickering between the bread and Daniel. "Why are you helping me?" Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Because you knocked on my door. Because you're freezing. And because I'm not the kind of man who leaves someone to die outside." Her expression softened slightly, but mistrust still lingered. Slowly, she reached for the bread. Her thin fingers shook as she broke it into small pieces. She ate carefully, almost like she had forgotten what food tasted like. Daniel watched silently, giving her time. After a while, her shoulders relaxed a little. She looked up. Most humans, they would have closed the door. Or worse, Daniel gave a dry laugh. "Maybe, but I'm not most humans." Her lips twitched, the smallest hint of a smile appearing before it vanished again. As she ate, Daniel studied the device lying near her blanket. It was small, metallic, with cracks across its surface. He picked it up gently. "What is this?" Immediately, Lyra's eyes widened. She reached out, snatching it from his hand with surprising speed. "Don't touch it!" Daniel raised his hands. "All right. Calm down." She clutched the device close, breathing heavily. "It's broken, but if it wakes, they'll find me. They always find me." Her voice shook so much that Daniel believed her without question. Whatever the device was, it wasn't safe. "Then we'll make sure it stays broken," Daniel said firmly. Lyra blinked, surprised at his calm tone. "You'd risk that?" "You don't even know me," Daniel shrugged. "I don't need to know everything. I just know you're in trouble, and I can't ignore that." For the first time, her eyes softened. She stared at him as though trying to understand this strange human who gave without asking, who trusted without proof. The fire popped loudly, pulling them both from the moment. Outside, the storm screamed louder. Daniel walked to the window and lifted the curtain slightly. Snow blurred his view, but his eyes searched the dark forest beyond. No sign of the moving light he had seen earlier. Still, unease clung to him like the cold. Behind him, Lyra whispered something in her own language. Her voice was soft, almost like a prayer. He turned. "What did you say?" She looked away. "It means, thank you," in my tongue. Daniel nodded once. "You're welcome." Time passed slowly. The storm refused to calm, but inside the cabin, warmth and quiet spread. Lyra's breathing grew steadier as she finished her food. Her eyelids drooped, exhaustion dragging her down. "You can rest," Daniel said gently. "The bed in the next room is clean. You'll be safe there." Her eyes widened and she shook her head quickly. "No, I can't. I can't be alone." "Not tonight," Daniel hesitated. He saw the raw fear in her face, the way her hands clutched the blanket like a lifeline. Finally, he nodded. All right. Stay here by the fire. I'll keep watch. Lyra settled against the rug, curling near the flames. The blanket wrapped around her small frame, and within minutes her breathing slowed into fragile sleep. Daniel stayed awake, his eyes shifting between the window and the fire. His mind spun with questions. Who were these hunters? Why was she running? And why did he feel, deep inside, that her arrival would change his quiet life forever? The storm raged on, but Daniel didn't notice the cold anymore. His focus remained on the sleeping alien girl and the unknown danger waiting outside. Somewhere in the distance, hidden by the snow, a faint blue light blinked once, then vanished into the dark. The first night, the storm did not end. It screamed outside like a wild beast, shaking the cabin's walls and rattling the roof. Snow piled against the windows, covering the world in white silence. Inside, however, the fire still burned, throwing warm light across the room. Daniel sat in his chair, his eyes half on the window and half on the sleeping alien girl. Lyra lay curled on the rug near the fire, her face soft now, free from the fear that had filled it before. The blanket wrapped her like a cocoon, and for the first time she seemed at peace. Daniel could not sleep. His mind turned over again and again. He had not asked for this. He was just a man who wanted quiet nights and simple days. Yet here was an alien girl in his home, frightened, hunted, and alone. And whoever hunted her might already be close. He rose quietly and checked the door, making sure the latch was firm. Then he walked to the window again. He pulled back the curtain just enough to see the forest outside. Snow blurred everything, but he thought he saw something move between the trees. A flicker of light, quick, almost hidden. His heart tightened. He let the curtain fall. No use worrying her now. She needed rest. A soft sound behind him made him turn. Lyra stirred in her sleep, whispering something in her strange language. Her voice was low, almost like she was pleading with someone. Daniel knelt beside her. "Hey," he said softly. "You're safe. No one will hurt you here." Her eyes opened slowly, glowing faint silver in the firelight. She blinked, confused, as though unsure if she was dreaming. When her gaze settled on Daniel, she relaxed a little. "You stayed awake," she whispered. "Yeah," Daniel replied. "Someone has to keep watch." She sat up, pulling the blanket tighter around herself. "You don't understand. If they find me, they won't stop with me. They'll kill you too." Daniel met her gaze. "Then it's a good thing I'm not easy to kill." Her lips trembled, and for a moment Daniel thought she might smile. But instead she looked down, her hands twisting the edge of the blanket. "Do you want to tell me why they're chasing you?" he asked carefully. Lyra was silent for a long moment. Finally she spoke, her voice low. "I was supposed to serve them, my people. Some of us are taken as workers, slaves. I ran away. They don't forgive that." Daniel's jaw tightened. Slavery. He had heard whispers about it in off-world trade, but seeing the truth in her eyes made his stomach twist. "And now," she continued, her voice shaking, "they hunt me, because if one escapes, others will try. They can't allow that." Daniel clenched his fists. He hated the thought of anyone being hunted like an animal, especially someone so young and fragile. "Well, you're not a slave anymore." "Not here." Lyra looked at him, eyes wide, as if the words were too good to believe. Silence settled again. Outside the storm howled, but inside the cabin warmth grew between them. Daniel stood and fetched another blanket. He handed it to her, but she shook her head. "No. If I sleep alone, the dreams come." Her voice was so small, so broken, that Daniel felt something stir inside him. Not pity, something deeper. "A responsibility." "Then stay near the fire," he said gently. "I'll sit close. The dreams won't touch you while I'm here." Lyra nodded, curling back onto the rug. Daniel pulled his chair closer to the fire and sat beside her. The flames danced, painting the walls with gold and shadow. Minutes stretched into hours. At some point, Lyra's breathing slowed again, steady and calm. Daniel watched the fire, his mind wandering. He thought about his own past, about the war years ago, when humans first made contact with other species. He had fought then, and he had seen fear in many alien eyes, but never had he seen someone so lost, so fragile, as the girl who had knocked on his door tonight. His eyelids grew heavy, but a sudden sound pulled him awake. Crunch. Snow outside the cabin, heavy steps, slow but clear. Daniel froze, listening hard. Another step. Then another. He glanced at Lyra, still asleep, unaware. He stood silently and moved to the window, careful not to make a sound. Pulling back the curtain, he saw shadows moving in the white storm. Figures, 2, maybe 3. They were searching. His breath caught. Whoever they were close. He stepped back from the window and looked at the sleeping girl. Her trust, her fear, her desperate plea, it all returned to him in one sharp moment. Daniel knew one thing for certain. This night was not going to end quietly. The knock that had brought her to his door was only the beginning, and now, danger was already waiting outside. Secrets of the alien girl. The storm outside had quieted by morning. Snow covered the ground like a white ocean, stretching as far as the eye could see. The forest stood still, heavy with ice, its branches bent under the weight. The world looked peaceful, but Daniel knew better. Peace was only an illusion. Last night he had seen shadows in the storm. Someone had been there, watching. Inside the cabin, the fire still burned low, keeping away the chill. Daniel moved quietly, placing another log into the flames. He glanced at Lyra. She was awake, sitting on the rug with the blanket around her shoulders. Her silver eyes reflected the firelight, but there was something else in them now. Fear mixed with shame. "You didn't sleep much," Daniel said softly. Lyra shook her head. "I don't sleep well. Too many memories." Daniel sat down across from her. He could see the exhaustion in her face. She was young, fragile, yet carrying something heavy inside her. "You can tell me," he said gently. "I want to understand." For a moment, she said nothing. Her hands twisted the blanket nervously. Finally, she reached into its folds and pulled out the small, broken device. Daniel's eyes narrowed. "You carried that all night," he said. "It's all I have left." She whispered. "This was my key, my link, but it's broken now." Daniel leaned closer. "What is it?" Lyra's voice shook. "A communicator. And a tracker. It belonged to them, the ones I ran from. If it still worked, they'd already be here." Daniel frowned. "And why did you keep it? If it's dangerous, why not throw it away?" Her silver eyes filled with tears. "Because inside, there is something else. A memory, my mother's voice. It's the last piece of her I have." Daniel's chest tightened. He had not expected that. He understood now why she clung to the broken device like it was life itself. It was not just a machine. It was her past, her family, her only comfort. "I won't take it from you," Daniel said quietly. "But you should know. If it ever lights up again, we'll have trouble." Lyra nodded. "I know, but without it I am nothing." Silence fell between them. Daniel leaned back, watching the fire crackle. He wanted to ask more, but he didn't want to break her fragile trust. She had shared something important already. Finally, Lyra looked up at him. "Why are you different?" "Why help me?" "You don't know me. You don't owe me anything." Daniel thought about it. He could have closed the door last night. He could have pretended he never heard her knock. But something inside him refused. "Because I've seen enough people left behind," he said. "I won't do it again." Lyra studied him carefully. Her eyes softened, but the fear never fully left. She took a deep breath and spoke again. "I need to tell you more, so you'll understand why they hunt me." Daniel leaned forward. "My people, we are not all free. Some serve the guild, the hunters. They take us when we are children. Train us, control us. We are marked." She pulled back the blanket and showed him her arm. Daniel's breath caught. There, faint but clear, was a glowing symbol etched into her skin. It pulsed softly, silver against blue. "This mark means I belong to them," she whispered, but I refused. "I escaped. That is my crime." Daniel's fists clenched. The mark was no scar of honor. It was a chain burned into her body. "They will come for me," Lyra continued, her voice trembling. "They will never stop. And anyone who helps me," her voice broke, "dies." Daniel stared at her. He knew the risk now. He knew what it meant. But his answer was simple. "Then they'll have to go through me first." Lyra's eyes widened. No one had ever said that to her. For a moment she looked like she wanted to believe it, but then her face fell again. "You don't understand how strong they are." Daniel stood and walked to the window. Snow glared back at him. The forest was silent. Too silent. "Maybe I don't," he admitted. "But I know this. You're not leaving here alone. Not while I can help." Behind him, Lyra's silver eyes filled with tears. She pressed the broken device to her chest, whispering words in her own language. Daniel couldn't understand, but he knew what it meant. Gratitude. Hope. The The fire flickered, casting long shadows across the cabin. Daniel kept watch, his jaw set, his heart steady. The secret was out now. Lyra was not just a lost traveler. She was a runaway, carrying both her people's mark and her mother's last voice, and whoever hunted her was already closing in. Trust and bond, the day passed slowly. The storm had ended, leaving behind a silent white world. Snow stretched across the land like a heavy blanket. The forest stood frozen, quiet, yet Daniel felt the silence was not peace, it was warning. Danger hid somewhere in those trees. Inside the cabin, the fire burned steadily. Lyra sat near the table, nibbling carefully at the food Daniel had given her. She was calmer now, but her eyes still carried shadows of fear. Every sound outside made her head snap up. She was like a bird always ready to fly. Daniel moved around the cabin, fixing small things, keeping his hands busy. But his thoughts kept circling back to her. She was fragile, yes, but not weak. He could see strength inside her, buried under fear, but still there. After some time, he sat across from her. "You're warmer now. Feeling better?" Lyra nodded slowly. "Better, but not safe." Daniel gave a small smile. "Safe is rare, but you're safer than you were last night." Her silver eyes searched his face. "Why do you talk like that? As if danger is normal for you?" Daniel leaned back in his chair, staring at the fire. "Because I've seen enough of it. I was a soldier once. I know what it's like to run, to lose, to fight." Lyra tilted her head. "And now you live here, alone. Sometimes peace is found in silence," Daniel said. "Until someone knocks on your door." Lyra lowered her gaze. "You should have never opened it. Now your life is in danger too." Daniel shook his head. "No, I'd rather live with danger than live knowing I left someone out in the cold." For a moment she said nothing. Then slowly a small smile touched her lips. It was faint, fragile, but real. Later that evening, Daniel showed her small things around the cabin. How to feed the fire. How to boil water. How to fix the latch on the door. Lyra watched carefully, curious about everything. When she tried to copy him, her clumsy hands fumbled, but she laughed softly, the sound light and strange in the quiet cabin. Daniel found himself smiling too. For the first time in years, the silence of his home didn't feel empty. At one point, she held a spoon awkwardly, turning it over in her hand. "Your tools are strange," she said. "We use different shapes, different metals." Daniel chuckled. "Well, you'll get used to ours. Who knows, maybe you'll even like them." She blinked at him. "You think I will stay?" The question hung heavy in the air. Daniel didn't answer right away. Finally, he said, "That depends on you. You're free now. No one owns you. If you want to leave, I won't stop you. But if you want to stay, you can." Her eyes shimmered with emotion. Freedom was a word she had dreamed of but never felt. Now here, a stranger offered it like a gift. As night fell, the cabin grew quiet again. Lyra sat near the fire, her blanket around her shoulders. Daniel kept watch at the window. The forest was dark, the snow glowing faintly in the moonlight. He thought about the hunters she had spoken of. They could be out there right now, waiting. Suddenly, Lyra's voice broke the silence. "Daniel?" He turned. "Yes? Will you teach me?" "Teach you what?" She hesitated, then said, "How to be strong. How not to be afraid." Daniel studied her. She was young, but there was determination in her eyes. "Strength doesn't mean no fear," he said. "It means protecting what matters even when you're afraid." "Then teach me that," she whispered. Daniel nodded slowly. "All right, but first you rest. Tomorrow we start small." Later that night, when Daniel thought she was asleep, he stepped outside for a moment. The cold hit him like knives, but he needed to see. The snow crunched under his boots as he scanned the tree line. At first all was still. But then movement. A shadow slipping between the trees, almost invisible. Daniel's jaw tightened. They were close. Too close. He returned inside quietly, not wanting to alarm her. But when he entered, he found Lyra sitting up, clutching her blanket. "You saw them, didn't you?" she asked softly. Daniel froze. She had sensed it too. "Yes," he admitted. "But don't worry. They won't reach you here. Not tonight." Her silver eyes locked on his. "Why are you doing this for me? Why risk yourself?" Daniel walked closer, kneeling beside her. "Because no one should face the dark alone." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. Instead, she reached out carefully and touched his hand. Her fingers were small, cold, but steady. For a long moment, neither spoke. The bond was forming, fragile, but real. As the fire dimmed, Daniel sat back in his chair, still watching. Lyra finally lay down, whispering words in her own tongue, a soft prayer. He didn't understand the language, but he felt the meaning. Trust. The first night had been fear and silence. The second night was different. The bond between them had begun. But outside in the frozen forest, 3 figures moved closer through the shadows, leaving no tracks in the snow. The hunters had found the trail. The threat returns. The night was quiet, but it was not safe. Daniel sat near the window, the rifle he had kept hidden for years now resting across his lap. He hadn't touched it in so long, but tonight was different. The silence outside was heavy, unnatural, and his instincts told him danger was close. Lyra slept near the fire, her breathing soft. She looked peaceful, but Daniel knew it wouldn't last. He had seen shadows in the trees, and the way the forest went silent told him something was watching. Suddenly, crunch. Snow outside shifted. Slow, deliberate steps. Daniel froze, his grip tightening on the rifle. He rose quietly, moving to the door. Another sound followed, faint voices. He couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear, commanding, hunting. Daniel's heart pounded. They were here. He turned quickly to Lyra. "Wake up," he whispered sharply. Her eyes opened instantly, silver shining in the dim light. She sat up, fear flashing across her face. "They've come." "Yes," Daniel said. "Stay quiet. Stay low." Before she could respond, a heavy knock shook the door. "Bang, bang, bang, open up," a rough voice shouted. "We know she's in there." Daniel's jaw clenched. He motioned for Lyra to stay back. Then he stepped to the door, keeping the rifle low but ready. "Who are you?" he demanded. "We're here for what's ours," the voice growled. "The girl. Hand her over and you live. Resist, and you die with her." Lyra's breath caught. Her hands gripped the blanket tightly, her whole body trembling. Daniel's blood boiled. Ours. They spoke of her like property, like she was nothing but a thing to be collected. He looked at Lyra, then back at the door. "You're not getting her," he said firmly. For a moment, silence, then laughter. Harsh, cruel. "You think you can stop us, human? You don't know what she is. You don't know what she's worth." Daniel lifted the rifle. His voice was steady. "I know enough. She's not yours." The laughter stopped. Then suddenly, crash. The window shattered as something heavy slammed through it. Glass and snow burst into the cabin. A dark figure rolled across the floor, metal armor glinting. Lyra screamed. Daniel fired. The rifle cracked, the shot echoing through the cabin. The figure stumbled but didn't fall. 2 more shadows appeared at the door, forcing it open. Hunters. Their faces were hidden by masks, their eyes glowing faint in the dark. Weapons gleamed in their hands, strange alien tools meant for capture, not mercy. Lyra scrambled backward, clutching the broken communicator to her chest. "Don't let them take me," she cried. Daniel's rage surged. He fired again, the shot slamming into the first hunter's chest. This time the figure dropped, falling hard onto the wooden floor. The others stepped inside, weapons raised. Sparks lit the air as one swung a blade of blue energy. Daniel ducked, the weapon slicing the wall instead of his head. "Run, Lyra," he shouted, but she didn't. She froze, her silver eyes locked on him. The second hunter lunged forward and Daniel fought back, swinging the rifle like a club. Wood cracked against metal, forcing the hunter back a step. The third moved toward Lyra, hand outstretched. "No!" she cried, and in that instant something inside her broke free. Her mark, the glowing symbol on her arm, flared bright, flooding the room with silver light. Energy burst outward, slamming into the hunter. He flew back, crashing into the table and shattering it. Daniel stared in shock. What was that? Lyra looked at her arm, terrified. I don't know. I never used it before." The hunters recovered quickly. One growled, "She's activated. We must take her alive." Daniel pulled Lyra behind him. "Over my dead body." The cabin erupted into chaos. Fire crackled. Snow blew in through the broken window and steel clashed against wood. Daniel fought with everything he had, his soldier instincts returning with brutal force. Lyra, trembling but determined, stood beside him, her arm glowing faintly as if power still lingered inside her. Finally, after a desperate struggle, the hunters pulled back. One shouted something in their alien tongue, and the others retreated into the storm. Silence fell again. The cabin was broken. Window shattered, table destroyed, blood staining the floor. Daniel leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. Lyra's hands shook as she knelt beside him. They won't stop. They'll come again, stronger. Daniel looked at her, his chest rising with heavy breaths. Then we'll be ready. You're not alone anymore. Her silver eyes filled with tears. For the first time she believed him. The storm outside had ended, but a greater storm had just begun. A new beginning. The cabin smelled of smoke and broken wood. Shards of glass covered the floor, and blood stained the rug near the fire. The hunters were gone, driven back into the storm. But Daniel knew this was not the end. They would return. They always returned. Daniel sat on the floor, his back against the wall, catching his breath. His chest burned with exhaustion. His rifle lay broken beside him, cracked from the fight. Across the room, Lyra knelt by the shattered table, her hand shaking as she clutched the glowing mark on her arm. She looked at him, silver eyes wide with fear. I didn't mean to do it. The light. It just happened. Daniel wiped blood from his forehead. You saved us, but they'll come again, Lyra whispered. Now that they know I can use it, they won't stop. They'll send more, stronger. Daniel pushed himself up, limping to the fire. He threw another log into the flames, watching sparks fly. Then we don't wait for them. We move before they do. Lyra blinked. Move? Where would we go? Daniel turned to face her. Anywhere but here. They'll expect us to hide, so we won't. We'll leave before dawn. Her lips trembled. I've only ever run, never with someone else. Daniel softened his voice. Then this time you won't be running alone. As the first light of morning broke across the snow, Daniel packed what little he had, a small bag of food, a flask of water, some tools. Lyra helped quietly, though her hands shook with every sound from the forest. At one point, Daniel noticed her carefully wrapping the broken communicator in cloth. Still keeping it? He asked. She nodded. It's all I have left of her voice. Without it. I forget. Daniel didn't argue. He understood. Some things you carried not because they were safe, but because they were part of who you were. When the cabin was ready to be left, Daniel paused at the door. He looked around the place he had called home for years. It had been his refuge, his silence. Now it was broken, marked forever by blood and battle. He tightened his grip on the bag. Time to go. Lyra stepped beside him, pulling her blanket tighter around her shoulders. Together they opened the door and stepped into the morning. The world outside was white and endless. The forest loomed tall, dark against the snow. Every branch dripped with frost, every shadow seemed alive. Daniel led the way, his boots crunching on the frozen ground. Lyra followed close, her silver eyes scanning the trees. They walked in silence for a long time. The only sound was the wind and their footsteps. But even in silence, something had changed between them. The night before had created a bond stronger than fear. Finally, Lyra spoke. Why do you fight for me? You could have given me to them and lived. Daniel didn't stop walking. Because I've seen chains before. I've seen what they do to people. I swore I'd never stand by again. Lyra lowered her gaze. You don't even know me. Daniel looked at her. I don't need to. I know enough. You're not theirs. You deserve a chance to live free. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. She looked away quickly, but Daniel saw the hope beginning to break through her fear. By midday, they reached a ridge overlooking the valley. Smoke rose faintly in the distance. Daniel frowned. Not good. Could be them. Lyra clutched his sleeve. They're close. Daniel scanned the land, then nodded. We keep moving north. Toward the mountains. Harder for them to track us there. They descended carefully, snow crunching underfoot. The cold bit at their skin, but Daniel stayed strong, guiding her forward. Every step was heavy, but every step was also freedom. As the sun dipped low, painting the snow in shades of gold, they paused by a frozen stream. Daniel set down the bag and built a small fire. Lyra sat beside him, her silver eyes reflecting the flames. For a moment they were quiet. Then she spoke softly. Daniel, if they catch us, I don't want to go back. Promise me you won't let them take me alive. Daniel looked at her sharply. Don't talk like that. Her voice trembled. Promise me. Daniel hesitated. His heart ached at her words. Finally, he reached out, taking her small hand in his. I promise something else. I promise I'll never let them take you at all. Her eyes filled with tears. She nodded. holding his hand tightly as though it was the only anchor she had in the endless storm. That night under the cold stars, Daniel stayed awake by the fire, rifle in his lap once more. Lyra slept beside him, the blanket wrapped tight, her breathing calm. He looked at her, this strange alien girl who had appeared at his door, freezing and alone. In one night she had changed everything. His silence, his solitude, his life. Daniel knew the road ahead would be dangerous. The hunters would come again. But he also knew one thing with certainty. He would fight for her again and again until the end. The fire burned low. The night deepened. But for the first time in years, Daniel didn't feel alone. He felt purpose. And so began their new journey. Not as a soldier and a runaway, but as two souls bound together by trust, danger, and something stronger than both. A new beginning had come.